Welcome to the Tonya Hofmann's fabulous TV show. I'm your host, Tonya. And as always, we have an incredibly fabulous guest star today. And it is the only one ever. Oh my gosh, he's amazing. Mr. Corey Poirier. Hey, Corey.
Hello, Tonya.
Yeah, he has one of those last names that we're like, what?
Yeah, I'm okay with that. It's when people Google you, it's okay to be to stand out a little bit.
Exactly. So we're going to get back to Corey in just a second, but I wanted to remind you that we want you to go out there and change the world from the front of the room. So jump on Public Speakers with an S, association, all spelled out.com, and find out how you too can become a member. And mention the TV show and you can get half off. So the coupon code is TV half off. Very easy, right? All righty, so let's get over to Corey. So tell me, Corey, what's fabulous going on in your world right now?
So the fabulous thing for me today, as we sit here, is I'm in the midst, as you know, Tonya, about launching and I guess relaunching our TedX program. So for me, to get to see people on either the start of their journey or the middle of their journey toward getting on that stage where they can impact so many lives, that to me is super exciting. If you ask me, and the reason I say at present, if you ask me 3 weeks from now, the answer will be different. It's always a moving target, but that's what's current right now. So super stoked. I tried to put excited and stoked together at the same time. I haven't done that yet. Super stoked / excited for that.
Nice. Yeah, we can come up with new words here. It's okay.
That good to me.
Stokeding, whatever we need. So, all right. So I know, a lot of people really love the whole idea of doing a TED, talk and kind of getting their message out there. Is there, because I know a lot of times people, when you listen to TED Talks, is all a story. And then sometimes it's really hardcore information. Is there kind of a formula of how much should be, or maybe is it what the place is looking for that you're booking? What is it that they're looking for?
So I would say it's one of those answers, and I'm this guy that always says it depends. I'm never an absolute yes or no, because there's variables, of course. So there's you should be obviously looking for and finding out what that TEDx event is looking for. So, if it's an event on science and artificial intelligence and rocket science and stuff like that, then they might be wanting it to be a bit more technical. Or the flip side is they may say, we want people who don't understand rocket science to be able to understand this. So they may want it to be more storytelling and different than the norm. So yeah, I would first of all find out what they're looking for. And you can find that out a few ways. They might have the theme on the website. You can watch videos of other speakers they brought in the past. And if you look at the last 3 years and they've had the same style of speakers over and over, that tells you it's probably the style they're looking for. So you may decide to adjust to that style. And the other side is you may decide that the TEDx talks that I watch and love, or TED Talks I watch and love, have a certain approach. So maybe it's humor, storytelling, what have you. So I think you have to look and say, what resonates with you? What's my authentic self? And then if you're willing to, see what they want and try to merge it all together. And that's a hard task, but you're absolutely right. There's some talks that are very technical and very facts and figure driven. I'm a person that really actually likes emotional connection storytelling. So I tend to gravitate towards the opposite TEDx talks. And again, there's those TEDx talks where it's storytelling in nature, humor. There's a through line where, it's a story, but it's a major point and they want to leave you with this message. So I don't think there's any cut and dry, this is the approach you should take. But what I will say is there seems to be a format that works to make TEDx talks really popular. Like the top 20 talks, if you go to them, I would say 17 are, I'm just throwing a number out, but the higher majority of those are more along the lines of one of those two that you mentioned, the storytelling type with humor inserted, with the very engaging type speaker. So I would say the majority of the ones that are the popular talks work well in that format. So there's not a written rule, but that's the approach I think works best.
Right. And when you start looking at it, because a lot of times people are like, how is this marketing me? How do I use a TEDx talk for my business since I can't really sell during my TEDx talk?
Yeah, and the other side too is then you don't get paid for your TEDx talk, which not everybody knows that. But I had somebody the other day say, "Why would I speak on a TEDx stage? I get paid to speak." And so I'm gonna answer that question as I answer your question. The reason is it's because if you leverage it properly, it'll open doors like almost nothing else I've seen in 16 years of speaking. Even bigger now than a best-selling book, because now people can have a best-selling book using a process, and so a lot of people are discovering that and saying, okay, well, if somebody can release a book as a digital format and not have a printed copy and become an international bestseller in 2 days, all of a sudden it loses a little bit of its luster. But the TEDx talk so far hasn't lost its luster. So to answer your question, how does that leverage into income and growth? It really comes back to you leveraging it properly. If you get lucky and it goes viral, then that answers the question right there. If it goes viral, then it takes care of itself. One of my buddies, Richard St. John, has close to 20 million views on his TED Talk. And he told me from the day the TED Talk went viral, and there wasn't a name for it then, but the day it went viral, he hasn't prospected since, not once. So, that's if it goes viral. Chances are it's probably not going to go viral based on the numbers. So how do you leverage it? Well, you make sure you include it in your bio. You include it on your email signature. You post it on social media every now and then. You ask, maybe you tag an influencer in and say, this is what I shared in my TEDx talk. Do you agree with this? You find ways to make sure people know that you've done it and get it out there. And how does that turn into profit? Well, people will book you more often because they lend a certain credibility to it. If you want to have a book deal, they love being able to promote, we just signed the TEDx speaker, or even build your book around the talk, and so on and so forth. So it's really just how do you leverage it to get doors open that then turn into profit for you.
Right. And I'm sure that because there's so many people, after you did a great Facebook Live the other day on the Public Speaker Association Facebook group, I've had people who are like, oh my gosh, you mean people are like super nervous? Because you mentioned that there's like this nervous energy behind the stage. And so they're like, I don't know if I'm ready for that. It's funny how people like, psych themselves out before they even try,
Well, and I did add in as well, and one other thing I should mention, just back to the profit side, is that I didn't add, because we're talking speakers and speaking. The other thing is it'll get you on stages that you wouldn't be able to probably get on otherwise. So I probably should mention that. What I also added into with the behind the scenes, because I've had people say, oh, I was ready to rock this out and thought it'd be no problem until you mentioned that. But it's probably better to know that going in so you can prepare, because I find the more that you prepare your talk and you're ready for it, the less nervous you are. But I also added, of course, once you get on the stage, I found that most speakers, it becomes just another stage to them. It's just their time to shine and they're in their zone. And so it might be nervous to get on there, but I found once you're on the stage, everything changes.
Yeah, I've really found always that the first about 5 minutes of anyone being on stage, that 2 to 5 minutes of, okay, I'm here, I'm, in my element, and then boom, they're like in it and they're just doing their thing. But there's always that, kind of ramping up, getting used to the crowd, seeing everybody looking at you, that kind of thing.
Yeah, if I can give a tip for something that I do to deal with that, because people always say, what's your kind of pre-show ritual? And years ago, it used to be I would go off to meditate and stuff like that for 15 minutes. But the challenge now is more and more I'm sitting, let's say, at the table with the meeting planner and everybody else involved. And it's not really that you can say, okay, I know we're in the middle of a conversation, but I got to go meditate. It's not that easy to do that. So it's not that easy to do anything until you're standing up, getting ready to go on the stage. So what I do now is when they're reading my bio, obviously I'm still there in the moment and acknowledging the bio, but I know my bio, right? So I don't need to be sitting there focused on listening to it. And so what I do now is I always think of a comment that somebody shared with me. So, your talk changed my life. You mentioned this and now I'm applying it and my children are actually listening to me. I think of a comment that somebody made that says that I made a difference in their life. And I think of that and remember that seconds before I walk on stage. So while my bio is being read, I think of that. And that way I'm walking on stage in a mindset of I'm doing this for a reason, and people love what I'm doing. I'm making a difference, and it takes you out of that mindset of are they going to hate me? Is the mic not going to work? And all that kind of stuff. So that's what I do in my pre-show is just think of a really good comment that somebody made about a difference you made. And if you're just starting as a speaker, just think of one time somebody said, I'm glad you shared that on Facebook. It made me really think about something.
Yes.
Everybody has something they can think about that where somebody said you made a difference in my life.
Oh yeah. I mean, that was the kicker for me to become a speaker, because I was such an introvert and it was so hard for me to stand up in front of people. But that first moment of someone was like, "Wow, that you won't believe how that changed me." I'm like, "Me? I changed you? How did I do that?" That was like the kicker. I was like, "Oh, I'm hooked on this."
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's one of the things, I guess it's another tip for people in that regard. Brene Brown said this about her when somebody asked her how she delivered the TED Talk that she did and knocked it out of the park. And she said what she does I think she said for every talk, is when she's preparing the talk and then delivering it both, she thinks about somebody in her life, maybe a sister, a family member, what have you, that she'd want to share this idea with. And she actually presents to the audience as if every person in that audience is that person that she wants to share the idea with. And it sounds hard to do, but if you can do that, then all of a sudden, instead of them just seeing you as presenting to a group of people, you're now sharing an idea in a passionate way because you want your sister to learn how to do this. And so I've tried that and it's worked really well for me, versus the idea of thinking, oh, there's 1,000 people here waiting to hear what I have to say. If you can think about it as, I just want to get this idea across to the important person in my life, I think that changes the way you present as well.
Yes, I do the same thing. I start off and I'm like, okay, I really want to, make a difference in these people's lives. And looking at that affirmation right before I go on of why am I actually there? And it's not just for, if you're just there for your ego, you need to really rethink, being a speaker, because it really is an opportunity for you to kind of move the needle. So I love that whole approach.
Well, I'll also add too, Zig Ziglar, who a lot of people listening will be familiar with Zig Ziglar's work. His son Tom was on our show a while back, and actually it was an interview for the back end of our program, but we end up airing parts of it as well, kind of as a teaser, but on our show. And Tom shared that a psychologist one time approached Zig after one of his talks and said, you're on the stage today with Colin Powell, Bill Clinton, what have you. And he said, but there was only one speaker that really seemed like he loved every single person in this audience, and that was you, Mr. Ziglar. And he said, and I think that's why you got the longest standing ovation today. So back to your point, Tonya, that if you really love the audience, which goes to the idea of if you're sharing it as if it's the one person you care about, or if you do an affirmation, this is why I do this, I think that sets you apart from the speakers that are just going there to deliver their message and move on.
Yeah, I know. I've always told people, I said, if you're there just for the standing ovation, it's just for your own ego. It isn't for the audience. And a lot of people had to really rethink, why are they a speaker? Why do they want to have that, yay, and then they walk away. I'm like, that's not what you want. You want them thinking and talking to each other about what you just said and hopefully signing up for something.
Absolutely. Well, Alan Weiss, I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he has a book called Money Talks, Get Paid. I think it's like Make a Million as a Professional Speaker. But one of the things he says in that book, which always stuck with me, is he said, if I had to choose between the two, I'd rather get invited back than get a standing ovation.
Yes.
And so what he said is sometimes I make people uncomfortable. I make them think about their life. I make them think about things they don't want to think about. So they're not going to give me a standing ovation. But after they leave there and they sit with it and they apply that stuff, then it starts changing their life. Then they're like, we need to bring that guy back in. He said, I'd rather have that every day of the week than the standing ovation. So anyway, that's always just stuck with me. Try to get both, but if you can only get one, that's probably the one to go for.
Well, I always talk to the meeting planner or the person that's in the room with me before I go on. And I'm like, look, I'm going to get people not to stand up and give me a standing ovation, because usually they freak out when people aren't like, yay, and they're clapping, right? They freak out and they start clapping and they're trying to get everyone to start. And I'm like, no. I says, I'm going to have them fill out a little form for a contest. And I want them sitting down, filling that out when I'm done. And then we can draw and then we're done. And then they can clap, but it doesn't need to be huge. And they're like, really? Are you sure? And I'm like, yeah, I'm sure.
That's awesome. I love that.
So tell us, I know you've got something amazing for our listeners today. What is that?
So I put a book out just a couple of years ago called Enlightened, and it's still one of my favorite books that I've released. If you're allowed to have a favorite of your own books, I think you need to be proud of your own babies and work. And it's still the one, I guess, because it's more an organic way to live your life, run your business, but still talks about the practical way of how you work with clients, bring in clients. So it's called Enlightened. And I believe that it's like the enlightenment for the rest of us, because I don't think we have to be sitting on the top of a hill in the grassy knoll with our legs crossed, looking up at the sky to be enlightened. And so it teaches people how to be enlightened for the everyday person. And so that's the book that I want to offer people for free. And it's a digital book. I think it's 150, 200 pages. Don't let that scare you. At the back, there's also quotes by thought leaders. So you can actually gain insight, and it's just one-page quotes. So that, the book's a bit of both. So it's at letsdoinfluencing.com. So it's just a matter of going to letsdoinfluencing.com. And what I will say is, in the longer term, depending on when you're listening to this, if you go there, maybe hear this a month or 2 months or 3 from when we recorded it. If you go there, you may see that our new our radio show's new website's up there. But if it is, I'm still going to leave a place where you can grab the book, and then you'll just be able to read the blog and see other stuff too. But for now, if you go there before that, you'll just see the page, grab your book, you're good to go.
Awesome. All right. So immediately go and take advantage of that. And enjoy his huge book. It's not just a 4-pager, guys. This is a real book. So go and check that out and, learn something today. That's what it's all about. Plus, please get connected with Corey. That's what it's all about. Bring him in to speak. I mean, obviously he knows a few things, so it'll be good.
Thank you, Tonya. This is my passion, 100%, and I don't think anybody would question that. This is my
life. I know. I was talking to this poor insurance person the other day, and I was like, "What do you do?" He's like, "I'm an insurance agent," and I'm like, "You really should rethink that and decide on really what do you actually want to do, because I don't think this is it."
Yeah. So that's probably the saddest for me personally. That's probably the saddest thing to see is when somebody's not only they not only dislike what they do, but they actually even hate admitting what they do. That's the saddest thing. To know that we all could find our calling. It's sad when you see somebody that not only doesn't look for it, but are stuck in a thing that, and it might be, for reasons that are not their own choosing, but stuck in this situation doing every day something they dislike, when it actually ends up being the lion's share of how you spend your day. You're working most of your day. So that's probably one of the saddest things I hear on a regular basis.
Oh yeah. Every time I'm like, really? Come on, dude. Let's figure out something for you. And even employees, because I meet a lot of employees for state governments and things like that. And, those that are like, oh, yeah, I've got to go back to work. And I'm like, how can I help you? How can I make your environment easier for you? And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, even as an employee, you're allowed to be happy.
Yeah, I don't think there's a law against that yet.
Yeah, I know. It's like kind of weird. All righty. Thank you so much Corey for being on today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Tonya. It's been an absolute pleasure. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in.
Yay. All right. And Corey, definitely want you to come back soon. And everyone, please go back to, what was it? Let's Do Influencing. LetsDoInfluencing.com and take advantage of his book. And we will see you soon. Check out Public Speakers with an S Association.com and take advantage of the TV half off special. All right. Bye, everybody. Bye, Corey.
Hey, everybody.